Businesses tend to focus on revenue, profits, and getting loyal customers. But how about healthy workplace culture? You're listening to How I Turned the Corner, where KENDRA Prospero leads eye-opening conversations that most business leaders avoid. The right way to address employee challenges. Listen to real-life stories of workplace struggles, giving you valuable advice on what must be done to make every employee truly satisfied and fulfilled in their job. This is for leaders who want to create great company cultures and for employees who want to do something to put an end to suffering at work in the most practical ways possible. Here's your host, KENDRA.
Do you ever think of your employees as a family? I don't personally really like that term, just so you know. It's not a family. I mean, you don't fire your family usually, but I now do think of business and of our employees as a community. I didn't used to feel that way or didn't even really connect with that until recently. And I'm suspecting that many of us founders and entrepreneurs and leaders don't necessarily think that way either. Community to me is defined as a place where people feel like they belong. They feel like they're supported and cared for. They have people, teammates now, in their lives that they can reach out to. I think we can do that as leaders for our cultures. We can create a community. And I know it will affect the bottom line because when people feel cared for and connected, they work smarter and they're less likely to leave. Now, I won't say it's easy, but our guest today has done that, and she's done it with a really unique group of people, young transplants to Colorado who are working in a manufacturing and warehouse environment. The work is hard, but she's created this community, and if she can do it, we can do it. Saloni Doshi is the CEO and Chief Sustainability Officer at EcoEnclose, the world's most innovative provider of sustainable shipping solutions for e-commerce brands. They're really making a difference for our planet by creating custom packaging solutions that are eco-friendly, recyclable, reusable, and regenerative. They're on a path to do great things, have a mission that's amazing, and she's also got a team that is thriving. Saloni Doshi, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at EcoEnclose, and tell us about your team. What are they doing? What are some of the folks that you've got on your team?
Yeah, that's great. I will say that was an incredibly generous intro. I think by and large, our culture is wonderful. I'm really proud of it. But I'm super excited for this conversation because we can go through like the ins and outs of what's working really well, where I still see challenges in our culture and our team. So I'm very excited to chat today. So you asked, about EcoEnclose and the types of roles that we have. So we have, let's call it around 50, 55 folks on our team right now. Okay. And we're all based in Colorado. And you alluded very well to it. So we're a manufacturing, warehousing, distribution. We do print work as well. So I would say our team is split about 50-50 with what we call, our back of house workers, which is our manufacturing and our production team. And that team ranges from, I said, like printing, packaging, to producing and manufacturing the boxes that we sell, to fulfillment, sort of a traditional warehousing and fulfillment sort of functions. And then we have, a handful of like folks that are focused on safety, on machine maintenance, and then a couple management tiers there. So that's our manufacturing facility or manufacturing area. And then in the same facility, we have, our front of house workers, which are our customer experience team. They're the ones who are fielding sort of standard and complex customer service types of questions. We have a sales team, our customer growth team, and they're the ones that work hand in hand with our enterprise, like household name brand clients that we work with. We've got an art department, and then we've got, sort of our marketing and website team. And they all are in the same building, which I think is a really special thing. That's not really common anymore, where warehouse workers work sort of alongside and in friendship with office workers. And I think that's one of the more exciting parts of our business.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think most of those environments really almost are dealing with two different cultures. And so do you feel like it's kind of one culture with the office and the warehouse?
Yeah, I've been it's looking back now, it's one of the things that I'm really excited about at EcoEnclose is that, functionally there's a lot of benefits, right? So I've got an art department, for example, that is working on a job with a customer and they're like, oh my God, when is this going to ship? or, is this going to look good? They literally just like walk through the doors and are talking to our print department, and they're asking, okay, when is this going to ship? Can I look at it when it's, when it's when it's being set up? So there's a lot of like functional benefits when we have a rush job, things like that. And then I think there's just a lot of, sometimes it would be friendships. Other times it would just be like collegial sort of connections that are made where you've got like somebody who works on our floor who might have experiences that they deal with that are sort of unknown to like a recent college graduate who is taking on a sales role. But what I'm finding is like these people become friends and they start to like understand each other's lives and support each other. And I just think that sort of empathy and community that straddles, like, for lack of a better word, maybe like classes and lifestyles and things like that has been, I hope, what a lot of people at the company might say is like a really profound part of their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned in the intro about a regenerative model, and this is kind of a heady concept, as you said before, but it's really the idea that you've got an ecosystem that has different environments, and different species in an ecosystem are going to survive in a different way and find ways to thrive, and are really become almost codependent upon each other's or their existence, right? Same thing can happen in a business environment when you create the conditions for people to thrive. In your case, you've created this really neat condition for people to thrive who are in these two environments. I'm sure it wasn't something that just happened though overnight, just like any ecosystem, right? It takes time, it takes effort and concentration. Can you share with us some of the things that you've done over the years to create the conditions for these folks to thrive the way they are?
Yeah. I'll share a couple, sort of rattle them off. They're a little bit disconnected. I think the first thing a lot of people point to is that we have a daily 9:45 meeting that anybody who's in the building, they stop work and they come usually outside unless it's raining or snowing. We go outside and every day a different person, and everybody on the team has to do this at some point. And over the course of 3 months, a different person leads the meeting. They share what their job is all about, what success looks like in their job. They share either a quote or a story or sometimes like song lyrics or whatever they want to share that sort of inspires or teaches the group something. They share like a win that they're dealing with personally or professionally, and a challenge that they're dealing with personally or professionally. And then they call somebody out on the team. We put that into place probably like 3.5, 4 years ago, and we have not missed it. We missed it, that's a lie. For 6 weeks of COVID, we stopped doing it. Sure. And then when we brought it back, and everybody was like, oh, it's back, thank goodness. It was, and I've heard from many people, and then at the end of that meeting, we then sort of kick off and talk a lot of the things that are going on in the business that people need to be aware of. And then we close out, it's like a 10-minute meeting. And many people have sort of pointed to that as like, just something they really look forward to, even if they're having a bad morning. It sort of sets them up to a good place. I think it's also a time where people have to grow. Like, I'm shocked at how many people are petrified to stand up in front of people that they know very well at this point to speak. But I think many of them have said like, okay, that's something I really grew from. So it's like a personal growth thing. And people just build like a little bit of empathy, right? You see somebody else speaking. And so that's one structure that I just really, I love. I love hearing it myself every day. Another thing we do is that we set up at our company, we set up monthly strategic sprints. So we've got we've got our strategic plan for the year, 5 priorities we're focused on. And in every priority, we say, okay, for the next 4 weeks, here's what we want to accomplish. Once a month, we share out for the entire team. We say like, here's where we are for the year. Here's how we did on last month's sprint. Here's what we're planning for the next month. And I think that, and we share our financials, we share sort of everything to everybody. And I hope that everyone feels like, okay, that they feel like they're part of the success of the business. We're not hiding anything from them. This is an interesting time, I think, for all businesses as we deal with economic uncertainty. We've been very open with our community about that. I feel like there's a lot of appreciation of that, in the sense that they're connected to the company and that we're treating them very respectfully by sharing all of this with them. We have Thursday, what we call Eco Ally training sessions, where sometimes it's just the front of house if it's very product technical, but a lot of times it's the whole company where we talk about a core value, or we do a training on sustainability. So helping everybody get sort of ingrained in our mission. And then Kyle and I we run the business together, and we are married. And I think a lot of people have said to us, like, our willingness to be pretty like personal with each other and like pretty open about our own like lives and our kids and all that stuff has allowed people to feel like they can also be very open and transparent with us about their personal lives and things like that. And I think that we're just like pretty not casual in an unprofessional way, but we're really like open and transparent. We meet with everybody one-on-one for like 15, 20 minutes to hear their reflections on the business and what we could be doing better. We do that twice a year. And that like really opens up a lot. And then I think the final thing, particularly for our warehouse team, is just we're like we try to be really like respectful and flexible. Our work in most departments, like it can be done any hour of the day, right? If to fulfill an order, if you do it at 9 o'clock in the morning or at 5 p.m., like that's okay. So if somebody needs to go pick up their children for an emergency, or they're dealing with something and they don't want to take their PTO, it's like, okay, fine, just to do what you need to today and make up your hours tomorrow. There's just like a pretty adult culture of flexibility. And I think people appreciate being able to do what they need to do outside of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing to me how few organizations do that, though. I mean, we do the same thing at Turning the Corner. Everybody, and that's what my staff will say, is that they feel like they're just treated like an adult. And I when they say that, I think like, that's just so, I'm glad, but I mean, like, how should it be any other way?
I totally
And
agree.
but I think I have a little bit more of an advantage in that I'm a services-based business. As a manufacturing-based business, though, I mean, how do you do that and balance shifts? And I mean, I'm sure it isn't just one person producing things. You've probably got a team and a workflow that has to happen. Like, what if someone in the middle of the process needs to step away? How do you guys manage that?
Yeah, it's an interesting week that you're asking that question. We've had like a sad amount of like life tragedies happen in our team. Like just a couple people have had loved ones who've passed away, and then some sicknesses and things just like happened on Monday. And so we're sort of working through that now. I think it's a good question. I'll say there are half of the jobs in our warehouse are done as an individual, like fulfilling an order is an example of one that's like, it can happen whenever. So as long as we get the order out that day or within 48 hours, it's okay. That department, our fulfillment department, has more sort of easy flexibility, I would say. Like somebody can call out one day and say, I'm going to make up the hours tomorrow, and that's totally fine. Then we have in our print and our production team where we do rely, like we want the machines to be running 24 hours a day, or you have to work alongside somebody who shares a shift. I think we've really found, I mean, we just are like, we come from the angle of yes, as much as possible. So if somebody's like, I need to do this, it's like, okay, yes, how can I make this work? And then I think the two things is cross training. So if I know that there's a couple other people on the floor who know how to keep a machine running, so if so-and-so needs to run out that day, then that's fine. We have enough cross training that happens. Our managers, like I'll step in and I'll fulfill, or I'll print if I need to. And my general manager and my floor manager will do the same. So I think having like a top down level of support is really helpful. And then I think we also have, like, because we give a lot of flexibility, we ask people to give us as much advance notice as possible. So if they tell us 3 days in advance that they know an emergent, like something's come up that they have to deal with in 3 days, then we can plan for that absence even better. But I think just like having a lot of people who can step in and support when it's needed, maybe at not the best, highest level of training, but that can just keep things going, is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So many manufacturing environments have really turned their manufacturing into pods where, one person does one thing and then it gets handed off. And I've always felt like that work would just be so boring for those folks, right? And I mean, they're not robots, they're humans. And I think gives when you can have a little bit more variety in the job, is better for everybody. And in this case, it really establishes and creates a place where you can have that flexibility, because they're not so dependent upon each other to get the work out the door.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that as an idea a lot. We talk a lot about flexibility and how businesses can bring it into their environments. And I always say, like, I know there's a way to do this, and you just gave me some really good ideas there. Well, so what was it like? I mean, you and your husband purchased this business a few years ago, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
You kind of inherited this team.
I'll say we purchased it 7 years ago, and it was 4 people big. So we've built this particular team that we have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one person on our team who is from the original 4.
Okay. Well, so what was leading like for you 7 years ago versus now?
Oh my God. If only I knew then what I know now, right? Yeah, I guess I'll say when we first acquired the business, I maintained my job that I had outside of EcoEnclose, so that we didn't have to rely on this business to support our family. And I was doing about 10 to 15 hours a week, supporting in far more of the sustainability part of the role. And then as it grew, And I'll say, like, I found myself having an affinity towards like managing the operations in the warehouse. And I was sort of like stepping into that naturally. And then the team grew to a size that we needed that level of oversight. And the company grew to big enough to support our family. I was able to move in and took the role of sort of like sustainability was one hat, and then managing the operations was the other hat. I think it's still a journey. So I'm not going to pretend that I figured this out, but I would say that I was a lot nicer, and I'm putting that in quotes, for the first 3 years, maybe in that role. And because of my quote unquote niceness, and looking back, right, it was just an inability to deal with conflict. I was creating like a more toxic, like less fun, good, healthy work environment for other people, right? You realize, like, if I'm treating one person with generosity who is actually treating people around them poorly, like, I'm doing a disservice to everybody, right? And I want them all to have a great time, like a great rewarding experience at EcoEnclose. I think right, each time you head on deal with a person who's bringing culture down or not doing their job well, you realize, like, in the aftermath, I should have done that 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And so every time you do it, it does not get easier, but you're able to understand, like, okay, the long-term benefits of this are so worth it, not just for like our bottom line, but for all the other people that I care so deeply about in our building, that it makes you act faster. So I think I act faster in difficult situations than I used to. And then I think the balance, if you want to create a culture where like community and flexibility are there, it can be really challenging to also be like, say numbers matter, our output matters. I don't have any outside funding. A lot of our competitors are very well funded by VC firms. And so it doesn't matter if every order that gets sent out the door is profitable or not, right? They can lose money on a lot of orders, right, and that's okay. We can't, like, we have to fund our growth and fund everybody's lives through just the cash that we generate. And I think that means, like, it's easy to be so nice and kind and think about community to the point that it's like, then you feel a little uncomfortable saying, but I also need you to put out 40 orders today. Otherwise I'm losing money and I can't afford to pay our workforce. And so I think my ability to manage the tension between those two things has gotten better as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can be misconstrued that a happy culture means that it's never hard.
Exactly.
And that's not the case at all. You can still have a great culture and the work is hard. There's pressure. There's, I'm like you, my business is like you. It's 100% customer funded. I mean, I don't even have a line of credit at a bank because I'm like, if I can't make this thing work with real money, then maybe it isn't a real business.
So wise.
Yeah. And I look at a lot of the companies that are VC funded, and I just, they're just spending money, just throwing it at things and so carelessly. And it's like, and then oftentimes they end up with things not really working very well in the long run. So I really appreciate your model, but it is hard when you have to make those tough decisions. Where do you feel like, did you turn to anybody? How did you learn how to have these difficult conversations? Was there a book or a training or something you'd recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I guess I probably did read a lot about things like just, you read blog posts and sort of see what comes up with. I will say that the biggest habit that I've taken on is to role play and practice, because I think books are really helpful. There's so many, likely, you probably can share better books than I could, but I realized, like, you just have to figure out how to do it in your own style. And, but you also have to make sure that you're being clear, and that you're, delivering the message. I think I read somewhere that, like, if you want to provide feedback, you have to do it with the balance of truth and grace, right? You have to be clear and direct and tell them the truth, but you have to do so with grace and kindness. And if you can't balance the two of them, it's not going to get across. And so I think hearing that, I said, okay, when I have to have a difficult conversation, I'm better at writing than I am at speaking in general. So I typically will write it down, like usually an improvement plan or some course of disciplinary action, or just like a first warning if necessary. And then I practice with somebody. Well, oftentimes it's Kyle, and I'll just say, okay, I'm going to deliver this message to you, and really tell me, like, is there something that I'm glossing over in my quest to not have an uncomfortable conversation such that it's not clear, or am I being too direct and aggressive? And we sort of role play it until I feel really comfortable with it, and then it's easier. Mm-hmm. Still not easy, but easier.
Yeah, for sure. It never is easy to have a difficult conversation. They're just not fun no matter what. But the more you practice it, the better you get at it, for sure. And I mean, that's one of the things we always recommend, because we do a management training program. And in that, one of the modules is dignified conversations. I came from IBM, where there's not a lot of nice things that were said when you were in trouble. And I would watch people just get lambasted, and I would be like, oh, that guy looks so bad. And, I felt bad for both parties. And I thought that's not actually a very dignified conversation. So that's how we think of it, is dignified. But I do think that your role playing is a great piece of advice for our listeners, because I think when you practice it, it often goes a lot better than what you expected it, how you expected it to go. So only once have I had a conversation where I practiced it over and over and over, and then I got into the situation and it did not go well with, my recent history of doing all this. And I thought, what could I have done differently then? But sometimes you just have a bad situation.
Sometimes you have that, and you never know what the response is going to be. So it's hard to practice every which potential it unfolds.
For sure. So tell us a little bit more then about some of the unique benefits that you feel like you have as an organization. So you've got this great view of flexibility. Are there some cool things you've discovered over the years that your staff really love that you've continued to fund or offer to them as a kind of unique benefit?
Yeah, great question. I think again, being sort of self-funded, we've had to scaffold in the benefits as we could. So, I think we started out with nothing. I'll say, when we inherited the business, as quickly as possible, we started to offer, health insurance, right? So it's we got to offer health insurance, and then we started to increase the premiums. And now for most people, we can cover their entire premium. Then we said, okay, well, Kyle comes from a background of finance and investing, and it was really important to him to have a culture where we were teaching people about investing. So we got our 401k up and running last year, covering things like life insurance and short-term disability, sort of covering the benefits that help people feel a basic sense of security in their life. And then the 401k has been really fun because we've been able to expose a lot of people who don't really, the concept of investing for the long term might not be second nature to them. And we have these sessions quarterly where we're talking about the 401k, how much has grown. Recently the market has tanked, and being able to help them understand, don't panic. This is actually a time to continue building your nest egg, not to panic and sort of extract yourself from your 401k. We've been able to share some of the financial wisdom that we've been able to learn. We've been privileged to learn in our own education with our team. And then I think a lot of things, so we have as many of the sort of basic benefits that some of the larger enterprises offer, we've been able to offer to our relatively smaller team. And then, other things, we have a fairly young team, and I think that they quite appreciate the fact that we are very good at socializing. So I've got my general manager now. He started out as a print associate a year and a half ago, and now he's our general manager of our floor. But he's an exceptional performer. He used to sing on a cruise ship. And then we've got a bunch of folks who play instruments. We have a couple of folks who have just gorgeous voices, and they all found each other and decided to create the EcoEnclose band. And it straddles the front of house and the back of house. And every couple, maybe two or three times a year, they'll just play. So we have a big party, in our parking lot. They perform maybe 8 to 10 songs, great songs, 80s, 90s, classic rock type of songs. I'll get a food truck and some, alcohol, and everybody invites their significant others, and we have a great time. And it's a pretty inexpensive way to have a really fun party that everybody gets to know each other and showcase their talents. And so that's and then a lot of folks, we have our artists, so we let them sort of design murals and artwork for our warehouse. So there's just ways that we help people, I think, showcase the people that they are outside of work here and bring their sort of fullest selves to work. And again, because it's a pretty young workforce, everybody loves to hang out and have a good time.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think we forget that when we get older and have our kids and our families. And when I joined IBM, I joined in this kind of this hole between a time when they had done a ton of hiring and then no hiring. Mm-hmm. So there was only maybe a couple dozen of us that were new, fresh out of college to IBM in this huge environment. I mean, it was like a small city in those days. And I felt so lonely and alone. And, I didn't feel that community, as I mentioned before. I just, everybody went home at night and they had their families, and I sort of went home to my cat. It was did not feel connected at all. So, I mean, of course, I didn't let that stay that way. I created this newcomers network. I found the 24 people that were brand new and we partied together, and we're still friends.
It's That's just a great insight, because I would say Kyle and I are not, we have 3 kids at home. We're exhausted from running the business. So we are not, we structure some of these parties. We make sure that they can happen. But I think you do a couple of those things. And then frankly, like, we don't have the capacity in our lives to be organizers of this. But I think it has allowed like a handful of there's like basically people everybody turns to as like, they're the social coordinators. So they'll organize like pedal biking things or hikes and stuff like that. So I think you can, as leaders, you can just lay this idea that like you want your workplace to be a culture where people can find each other and make connections should they want to. And then the folks that have the talent to create a social environment will sort of rise up and do it on their own. Like you don't have to, as a leader, be the one to do it. And frankly, you probably shouldn't, because they don't want to be hanging out with you every Saturday. They want to hang out with each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's better when it really grows out of its own ecosystem again.
Right, exactly.
And so when it's forced by the sort of alpha species, you and Kyle, right? I don't feel like it will necessarily survive and last as long.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Well, so now what's next for you guys? What does the next couple of years look like? I heard that you might be trying to expand to where you're shipping your packaging to. Is that still a plan?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that could be on the radar. I think we exist today a little. We are recovering, I think, a little bit from COVID, right? We're in an industry that had a massive spike in COVID, and then the industry is like in general over inventoried. So most e-commerce brands and suppliers of e-commerce brands have hit a plateau. And so I think when I look at this year, it's a lot of just like strengthening the foundations of our business, because during COVID, we made a lot of we grew in messy ways. We, in some cases, hired too quickly. We did things without setting up processes for them. And so I look at the next 6 months as a time where we're likely not going to grow. We're going to plateau because the industry overall is sinking, not sinking. It's just recovering, I would say, normalizing after COVID. And so that gives us an opportunity to let's be better at our SOPs. Let's make sure everybody's well trained. Let's make sure everyone's the right fit in their job and get the foundations right. So I see that as the short term. And then as I look longer term, I'd say the 3 things that I get most excited about is one, our product set needs to continue to be more and more sustainable. We're really proud of what we have today, but right now, every time one of our companies or anybody ships something, that packaging is still a net negative for the planet. Our vision is that in 10, 15 years, like every time you're shipping something, that packaging is net positive for the planet. And there's so much work we have to do to get there. So product innovation is a tremendously big part of it. I think another part of it is expanding into other verticals, right? Like primary packaging and other places where people need more eco-friendly solutions. And then I think the third is, I recently heard somebody say that the best thing you could do for your culture is creating an exceptional training program that really feels systematized and holistic and welcoming. And I think we don't need to hire very much today, but I think in 2023, 2024, we will. And so how do we create just like a world-class training program so that everybody, whether you're coming in to be a machine operator, or you're coming in to be a fulfillment person, or you're coming in to be, our national account rep, has some of the same foundations and gets like indoctrinated into our culture in a way that feels really welcoming, and that they just come right on board and can learn the complexities of the product set, but also the nuances of our culture and our core values really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you do end up opening up another location, I think that infrastructure is going to be a really good thing to be focusing on. Because each kind of plateau and peak that you go through as a business requires a whole new way of looking at your team and your staff and what they're going to need.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good idea.
That's such a good point. Yeah. Because I think from a carbon footprint perspective, we right now ship everything out of Colorado for the most part. And if we know we need to expand on the East and the West Coast to minimize carbon footprint to everybody who we're shipping to on the coast right now. And I think just what a beautiful point that if we can't be there, sometimes the culture can't rely on the specific people, right? The culture has to be in some way systematized. So we got to get there before we do that expansion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, this is great. I so appreciate this conversation. So what's the best way that, people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, anybody can email me anytime, Saloni, Saloni at EcoEnclose.com. That's just, I love hearing from folks. I love getting questions. I also love getting advice. So anybody's listening to this and thinks they have some ideas on how we can continue to do better, please share. Or if you're interested in sustainability and packaging, always reach out. And our website is EcoEnclose.com. So if you just want to learn more about what we're doing, check that out as well.
Yeah, and you guys have got some great videos too that show what you're doing. So I've got a lot of intros I want to make for you because I've got a lot of people I think could use this packaging for the stuff they're shipping. So we'll talk about that later too.
That sounds perfect. Yeah. Thank you, KENDRA. This is great. You've just so much wisdom in this space. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you to everyone who tuned in today for How I Turned the Corner. And thank you so much, Saloni Doshi with EcoEnclose. And we can't wait to check back in with you in a couple months to see how everything is going.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this exciting episode. We hope this discussion brings you closer to a better, healthier, and more rewarding workplace everyone deserves to be a part of. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at turningthecornerllc.com/podcast. Don't forget to share this with your friends in the corporate world. And together, let's make this space a hub of growth and job satisfaction. If everyone loves where they are, they can always give their best without regrets. That's all for now. See you on the next one.